Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ReQuest. Hi, Captain Logan. And joining me, as always, is Austin, the Day Ghost. Hello, Austin. Are you ready for another epic review?
What?
I said, are you ready for another epic review? The review itself might be epic. We're talking tonight about a movie that is not, because tonight's movie is a kind of low-key comedy.
Yeah, but we are doing it on the night shift, so...
On the night shift. On the night shift. How long is that going to be stuck in your head?
Forever, and specifically just that part. Like, I'm just, like, walking around at work just going, on the night shift.
I found myself trying to remember how I had the same thing, like how the verses go. I went back and listened to it later, and after a while I forgot it was even the night shift song, and then it finally wends its way back to the chorus. It's like, on the night shift. Oh, that's the song I'm listening to.
Yeah, exactly. You just kind of go like, oh, it's, I don't know, I'm just listening to some song. Oh, yeah, it's Night Shift. That's right.
That's by a band called Quarterfish, which I had never heard of before. And I went to play that song before we started because I wanted to try to get some of that melody back in my head. And I'm still in that place where that's the only part of it I'm remembering. But the video had a picture. It had come off of the greatest hits of Quarterfish. And I'm like, they had a greatest hits album? Who is that?
Vanilla Ice had a greatest hits album. He had like one hit.
Yeah, there's like, you think greatest hits would be just, top 40? Like it has to be like an actual hit, or at least top 100, right? Even like a really minor hit somewhere, but like it was played on the radio and it made the list. But then you'll have bands that I guess they just mean it for their audience. Like these are the things that people want us to play in concert. It's our greatest hits.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Some stuff it's like that, and then you get things like Beatles 1 where it's just their number ones.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Tonight we are talking about Night Shift, which is a 1982 comedy starring Henry Winkler, of all people, and Michael Keaton and Shelley Long. So 3, at the time, TV comedy actors who had not really done a lot in the way of films yet. This is Michael Keaton's first starring role in a movie, and it was directed by Ron Howard. It's a really interesting project that I had heard of, but knew nothing at all about, and requested on Patreon by Stone Gaspin. Another really interesting Stone Gaspin pick.
Yeah, well, it's also, I think, if I remember correctly, Ron Howard's second film that he directed.
What is his first? I don't know that right off.
That I don't remember. But I think it was the second.
I'm gonna look it up. I mean, I knew this had to be a really early Ron Howard movie. You had a lot of directors like this. Nimoy is kind of this way, who gets their feet wet initially with comedies and then very quickly kind of moves off to other kinds of things. Well, I say that with Nimoy. He didn't do a lot of directing. Oh,
that's right.
But
his first movie is called Grand Theft Auto, because I remember seeing that and laughing.
I mean, I've heard of that movie, but I didn't know he was the one who directed it.
Yeah, and I didn't know about that movie until last night. I was like, Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I only know about that because of Siskel and Ebert reviews, where occasionally that movie would come up, and I had the same thing. I was like, oh, there was a movie called Grand Theft? Okay. What is that? Maybe somebody should request that.
Somebody should remake that movie, and it'll do so well at the box office because it'll just confuse people, and they'll be like, yeah, I want to go see the Grand Theft Auto movie.
And then you'll have all these fans that'll walk out, and they're like, there were like very little in the way of references.
Yes, it'll be like any other video game movie.
Austin, would you quickly give us a plot synopsis of Night Shift? I almost said Night Court. Of Night Shift.
Oh, my Night Court VHS. Yeah, so Night Shift is about the Fonz and Michael Keaton, and they work at a morgue, and they get put on the night shift.
You could have said anybody. You could have said Batman. You could have said Beetlejuice.
No, he's just Keaton.
You could have said...
It makes it more awkward because the main female, her last name is Keaton in this. So it makes it
that was
more
weird.
Awkward.
I'm going to assume it wasn't because Michael Keaton was in it, but that they just already wrote the script, and then he came in, and they're like, oh, that's interesting. We're not going to change it.
No, that'd be really weird if they changed it because he was in the movie. They're like, let's make her last name his last name.
Yeah, especially since at the time, like, he's kind of a nobody. I mean, he's been in TV, but
Mhm.
There would be
Yeah,
no reason
exactly.
to do that. His last name is crazy. Ke-
Uh,
the,
I
the,
don't
the
I don't
character's
remember
name
that
that
film.
the character that Keaton's name is playing is Bill Blazejowski. Like I can't
Oh,
even say
right.
it. He's like because he calls himself Blaze, and he's like I'm Bill Blazejowski. I don't know how he even gets it out. He probably got the part because he was able to say that.
He was the only that was the only thing that they tested on auditions. Just can
Can
you
you
say this
say
name?
Blazejowski? I'm getting faster at it. Anyway, I'm sorry. What
Mhm.
happens in the movie?
So they work on the night shift at a morgue, like I said, and the Fonz lives next door to a prostitute, and they become close. And Michael Keaton's like, "Hey, why don't we become pimps?" And then they do that, and they just start running a prostitution ring, and then insanity ensues.
Yep, pretty much.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
by the end they get arrested. There's kind of typical action movie shenanigans by the end where it suddenly remembers that it's a movie and it's like, oh, something kind of big and major should probably happen in this movie that's not a sitcom pilot but feels like a sitcom pilot. And
Hmm.
then like suddenly the real pimps just all at once decide, oh yeah, we don't like that these guys have moved into our racket and now we're going to attack them. That came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I guess kind of. I don't know. It didn't really hit me as like, oh, this is kind of out of nowhere. It's like, oh, they're starting to get bigger with their pimping game, and now other pimps are mad. This is going to be a weird show because we're going to have to say pimp like 8,000 times. That's not a word you typically say
No, that
on the
it's not,
channel.
but they don't really act like pimps. They don't treat it that way,
Hmm.
which is, I guess, kind of the fun of it. With what they're doing is that because he is a former stockbroker and he takes that. Uh, like the skill set he had with that and he turns this into like as close to a legitimate business as possible even though it's of course illegal and so they call themselves agents before they're pimps
Hmm.
and they kind
Yeah,
of treat
like
it that
Stone
way and
Gassman, who's here, says
oh
they're
hi Stone Gasman.
brokers.
Yeah, love brokers, which Michael
Mhm.
Keaton keeps screaming on a train. Why don't we just real quick kind give our initial feelings and thoughts on this because I don't know if we're gonna 100% line up on it. Austin, did you enjoy this movie and what were your big takeaways from it?
Yeah, I thought this was pretty fun. I definitely felt like this could have been a sitcom, not then, but now. Um, you,
The
I
premise
don't.
is way too racy, way too risque for that time period. And I sent you a message when you were only like 10 or 15 minutes in and told you that. You're like, oh, why couldn't this be a sitcom? And then they get into the prostitution part. You're like, oh, now I see.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, we're still at a period where we're afraid of God, but nowadays you can get away with things like, we're pimps, we're gonna handle a prostitution thing in a sitcom. Um, but no, I thought it was pretty fun. Uh, what was I gonna say? It reminded me, not in terms of like actual material or anything, but it felt like another step in the direction of going from like your classic sitcom of that era to something like an Arrested Development, which is my favorite sitcom. And that, of course, is Ron Howard produced thing, and Henry Winkler is in that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I thought it was very much in the tradition of The Odd Couple.
Oh, for sure. No, it definitely has that too. I'm mainly talking about like in terms of like subject matter and stuff
Oh
like that.
yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, and that's what I was gonna say. Like it's like that movie, except it's pushing envelopes even harder. Although when you go back to when that came out, that movie feels uh somewhat racy for the time. I guess more conservative than this, I guess. But it's in maybe more subtle about some of the like sexual subject matter and stuff that they're talking about, where there's a little bit more of like winking and nodding to the audience, and this just comes right out and does that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm like I guess in premise just with these two guys trying to sort of figure out how they're going to live together, at least at work. And then it becomes your typical kind of like scheme comedy where like
Mhm.
we're not getting along, and we're not compatible as friends and as people that have to sort of live together, and then we come up with that quirky, crazy idea that's going to force us to be in a working relationship, and then hilarity ostensibly ensues after that.
Yeah, well,
And The Odd
they
Couple, of course,
become.
also was a sitcom, but that movie, and this is where the separation happens. Like, this isn't as good as that. Like, The Odd Couple is one of my favorite comedies of all time, and this felt to me like it was on its way to that, and then it kind of veers off somewhere for me. But this also felt like a sitcom premise from the very beginning. And Odd Couple is like a comedic stage play kind of thing, almost a one room drama that you can see how you could get episodic out of it. This feels episodic from the beginning. It feels like a pilot. And then it sort of even has episodes inside of it.
No, absolutely. Well, there was a part early on because, like you said, you messaged me and said, "Hey, it isn't going to feel like a sitcom as you go. You're going to realize it's a little bit more risque." And so it keeps going, and I go like, "Oh, like, does he just mean because like he can't satisfy his wife in bed? Like, is that the we're too risque thing? 'Cause that's like in every sitcom now. There's that episode, like without fail." So I'm like, yeah, yeah, like I guess maybe back then you couldn't do that. Like you'd have to like really kind of be cutesy about it probably. And then they become pimps, and Michael Keaton walks in and he's like, "Ah, did I do that?" And it's like, oh, okay, that's why it can't be a sitcom now.
And then he's got the part where he's breaking down what the word prostitution means. You're like, oh, okay, this can't be on television.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Which is really a testament to how much better television has gotten.
in some ways, I suppose, yeah. But even I feel like even maybe 10 years later, it would be easier to get away with this premise, at least on cable. But
Mhm.
it would be much more likely to be like an early 2000s kind of sitcom.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I
Uh,
guess that was some of the frustration I had with it, was it's not a cohesive enough like story for a movie. Like, I kept wanting it to be television, and that's somewhat of a testament to it, because it didn't know how to, in my mind, it didn't know how to be a movie, so I wanted more of it. Like, I wanted the half-hour pilot where they make the business plan and they get that started and they make that happen, and then hilarity ensues, and then every episode is they're dealing with the prostitutes, and they're trying to keep it a secret, and all of that, and like it falls apart too quickly. Like, we'll talk about this. I don't think the ending works. Like, that's kind of my biggest issue with it. And it was sort of like, we have this fun idea. We don't we spent a lot of time with the setup, and that's all great. And then we don't really know what to do with this idea because it's not a movie.
yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't really have an issue with that. I also just had over the weekend like a watch party of like several comedies that are all just kind of essentially just skits. So I guess I'm more like in that mindset for like going into a comedy movie, so it didn't bother me as much. But
That's
I can
fair, and it's
understand where
better
you're
than
coming
that.
from.
It's not like a Saturday Night Live comedy or anything. Like,
Yeah,
some of those are
uh,
good, but I'm saying it's not like a bad one of
Wayne's
those. Where like,
World. Yeah, well, and because it was like Holy Grail and National Lampoon's Vacation and Napoleon Dynamite were the three I watched, which are all just essentially just like here's little moments that are funny, and the overall story doesn't really matter. This has more of like an overall story, but I guess I was more so in that mood where it didn't really bother me.
and I also think it's funny all the way through.
No, absolutely, and that definitely helps for me. Where it's like, if you're a comedy, if you're at least funny, then I'm willing to be like not as bothered by plot issues.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, it's a review, so obviously I'm going to be critical of it,
No, of
and
course, I'm not like
but I'm
trashing you
still
for.
but I would still turn my sun green on it. Like, it was a lot of fun to watch, particularly for Keaton. I never, or I should say, rarely do I do this watching a comedy by myself. I laughed out loud probably 4 or 5 times at specifically things Keaton was doing. His comedic timing is genius in this. Like he's nuts and he's really funny, and it's almost like he's trying to carve out a space for himself as well. I mean, this is I'm saying this prematurely because this is before these guys were these guys in movies, but like he could have been Jim Carrey before Jim Carrey based on this movie. And he could have even been like Robin Williams as far as on screen before he had that reputation outside of television. And then his career, he does some comedies, and his career starts taking him in different places. But you'd think, based on this, that he would have been the comedy icon that Jim Carrey was.
I want to see that. What if reality is like? What if Michael Keaton was that kind of comedic actor? That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
and he had that reputation until Batman, which was a
yeah,
lot of the reason. Because everybody says you go back to '89, and the big complaint when he got cast, where people couldn't see it, and it seemed like the wrong kind of casting, was Mr. Mom is Batman. But if all you saw from Michael Keaton was this, you'd have the same reservations
yeah,
because he's a
absolutely.
30-year-old teenager in this movie.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it was like obviously I was born after that, but it was like I mainly knew him for that and Beetlejuice, where he's like not recognizable in any way. Like even now, it's hard to remember like these are the same person because he disappears so much in that role, and so it's hard for me to go back and see him as that kind of comedic actor. But I mean, he's great.
Yeah.
Well,
And he would continue to do comedic roles here and there, and some of his kind of poor choices uh, were in that vein as well. Stuff like Multiplicity, which I've never seen. I don't know if that's a good movie, but it didn't do real well. And I don't even really like Mr. Mom very much, but
and I've never seen Mr. Mom.
he's good in it. The script's not great. It's just it's really typical.
It's
It's
one
kind
of
of
those.
obvious, and there's an idea to explore there, and it goes to all the obvious stuff where it's like, oh, he's a man having to take care of his kids at home while his wife is gone. So what's he gonna do with dirty diapers? How is he going to shop at the grocery store? And like, isn't this situation funny because he's a man doing women things? And I don't know.
Yeah, it should have been
It's
like
real phoned in.
the Grabowskis. It should have just been he walks in and he just hits his baby with a hammer.
Real quick, talking about the Batman thing, I hadn't really had this thought before, but you know what it's sort of like? It's sort of like Chris Evans getting Captain America, where it's
Yeah, like
like
where
you
he's so
saw him as
comedic
Human
before
Torch and
that.
you went, how does that work?
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Where it's just like, oh man, like you're gonna cast the fun quippy guy as Captain America, but that's already what Iron Man is.
And
Like,
the guy with the opposite, and this just means that a lot of good actors have versatility and can play against types they've played before. Like, people always like to complain about typecasting, but then you cast somebody that's completely against type and you go, wait a minute, they're not right for that role. And you're like, well, this is why people get typecast, because you, the audience, aren't believing it. But the other thing is, it's not just that he's jokey, Austin. It's that with both of these guys, it's that we've seen them play characters that have like no direction and no wisdom and that no sense of responsibility.
mhm. Yeah, well, and it's interesting too with that comparison specifically because I think ultimately Chris Evans is more like a Keanu Reeves, where like I don't think he actually has range. He can kind of just play two roles, and then Michael Keaton has actual range.
Keaton does have range, yeah. Stone Gasman says nobody saw Clean and Sober before Batman, sadly, as that proved he could do drama. And I've never seen that movie.
It's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember him being pretty funny in. Oh my God, now I'm blanking on the title. Jackie Brown, the third Tarantino movie. But
Oh,
he's got
okay.
like a smaller role in that. He's a cop.
But anyway, let's talk about this cast now more broadly, kind of as a triad, because that's what we have here. And again, it feels like a sitcom pilot in that you have these three characters who are all trying to figure out how to get along with each other and are put in this unlikely situation where they all have to work together. And you have, I think, maybe too typical of a romance and also a really rushed romance. And maybe we'll get into that too.
Mhm.
But
That's
with
definitely part of the sitcominess of it, right?
yeah, with Shelley Long and well, and again, I thought some of that kind of came out of nowhere. But you've got Shelley Long and Winkler's characters who fall in love in the middle of the movie, and then by the end, all three of them are kind of like thick as thieves, and it looks like they're gonna go off into the sunset, all three together, probably working together or living together forever. Um, what do you think of their like a chemistry as a trio? And do you think Winkler is right for this, or was it weird casting?
Uh, well, it was interesting for me to see Winkler in this because I mainly know him for stuff now, like where he kind of shows up and he's like a bit role in like a comedy or a sitcom. So it was interesting seeing him as a leading man. But I thought all three of the major actors did a really good job. Since you asked me that, I'm guessing that you didn't like Henry Winkler, but
No, he had to win me over.
oh, okay.
By the end, I liked him in that role and with these actors more. At the time, it's kind of strange casting. I guess the deal is, I thought he did a really good job and the performance was great, but I thought the choice was weird. You know what I mean? Like, you ever
Mhm.
seen a movie like this where you can kind of separate, like, this performance works, but that's not who I would have cast. You know what I mean? Like, I kept
I mean, we kind of talked about that with that Robin Williams movie we did a little bit ago. Um, Jacob the Liar.
Jacob the Liar, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and part of it, I think, with Henry Winkler is I was right with him at the beginning because he gets switched to night shift and he hates it, and he comes in the like jerk day shift guy is watching the Flintstones, which sucks,
Flintstones, meet them
and I'm
Flintstones.
like, oh, I'm with you. I hate this day shift guy.
And he's just laughing at scenes that aren't funny.
Yeah, it's like
Almost
Barney Rubble's
objectively.
just
It's
standing there.
like Dino's just barking and he's like losing it, like he's watching a Roadrunner cartoon. And you're like, what are you laughing at?
Yeah, it's like Barney Rubble's just standing there and he's like busting a gut laughing and he's like, that Barney is so funny. That's like a Simpsons gag.
It really is, and I don't think it was in post the movie picking the wrong clip. I think that was on purpose.
Oh no, it 100% was on purpose. Absolutely.
So you said you were with him from the beginning, like, but you didn't lose him at any point.
No, I was like I thought like I said I thought all three of the major actors did a really good job. Like there was never a point where I was really questioning them.
The only person that feels actually typecast weirdly is Shelley Long.
And I've
Be-
never seen Cheers, so that's probably part of it. It's the
and
first thing I've seen her in.
and I've seen a couple full seasons of Cheers, and I like that show a lot. She is uh, she's particularly great in it, and obviously that is a classic romance with Jack and Diane, and
Well, it set all of sitcoms, even to this day, we still do it.
yeah, not Jack and Diane. What is his name in that?
Sam and Diane.
Sam and
No,
Diane. Yeah,
I
and
had to question myself too because I'm like, wait a minute, which one's the song and which
yeah,
one's?
I know. That's what I did. I was like, no, that's the song. God bless America. It's here come the Jetsons. One, two, three. But anyway, so she is, even though she's a prostitute, it kind of feels like she's not, I mean, she's not playing the same character, but she's playing it exactly the same way, where she's like this very intelligent woman who's in this role that she's too good for. And she kind of talks a little bit above people, although not in the same kind of book smart way that she does in Cheers, where she's clearly doing it on purpose as a like almost defense mechanism or to overcompensate for something. Which is part of why the dynamic between her and Sam in that show is so interesting because he kind of pretends like he's dumber than he is, and she has to tout how smart she is, and they're both defense mechanisms. But I thought that she was kind of perfect for this because the writing is in some ways a lot like Cheers. Like the comedy isn't. the timing is similar to the comedy in Cheers. Like I wouldn't say that the jokes are exactly the same kind of humor, but there's something about like the way the like the rhythm of it is like Cheers.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I was
And
hoping
and
to
there's a
watch.
dry wit to it in the way that Cheers has a dry wit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I was hoping to watch some Cheers after I watched this movie, but didn't get a chance to. But that dry wit too is also part of what
Maybe
makes
we'll do a
me.
Cheers watch party.
Yeah, let's
I
do
think
it.
you'll like it. I mean, it's a good show.
Yeah, I mean it's got a ton of Simpsons alum. That's a show I've always wanted to look at, but never
I
got
showed
to.
Dan an episode or two of that when I visited him in New Hampshire because he and I visited Boston, and that show takes place in Boston, and we went to the original Cheers while we were in Boston. We actually went to two Cheers bars that night because it's a this is just an aside, but it's a chain now, and
Oh, cool.
sadly during COVID they closed some of them. I think they may have
Oh,
closed one of the ones we went to, which is sad. But the original one, of course, is still there and is I think it's called Cheers, but it's not set up the same way that the franchise ones are because it has its original layout, and it doesn't actually look like the Cheers bar as much as some of the other ones where they've intentionally laid it out like the one in the TV show. But anyway, so I've been there, and that was really neat. And then the next day, I showed Dan some Cheers, and he thought it was funny, but didn't have any intention of watching any more of it.
oh, that Dan fella.
And I've kind of fallen off of it, but I was binging it real hard when after my twin girls were born, when I had time to do nothing but watch TV while I was taking care of kids. So somebody would wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd have to go get them, and then me and Cassandra would just sit around and watch Cheers while she was trying to go back to sleep.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, I'd see ads for Frasier all the time, and I was like, that looks like a show.
Yeah, and Cheers is the better show overall, I think. Having not
Well,
seen
I was like younger, so that was not aimed at me.
anything like all of it, I like Frasier a lot. We'll review this movie. I like Frasier a lot, but it like the quality of that really goes down after a few seasons,
Oh, that's
and it's also way too repetitive in its plots. And I don't think Cheers has that problem as much. Like people complain that the relationship in that gets stalled out for too long because famously those characters aren't allowed to get together because people won't watch the show. But Frasier is just kind of Frasier making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again so that we can, repeat a formula that seems to be working. And that's much, much worse to me than here's a relationship that we just won't let start going down the hill.
yeah. One, I feel like the relationship thing is just every sitcom. Like if you watch a sitcom, you're used to having characters that are just that.
That are
So
kind
like
of
that,
stagnant.
yeah, where we go like, oh yeah, like they're gonna get together. No. Oh look, they're gonna kiss. Oh no, now she has a new boyfriend. And
I
like,
think that show was maybe more notorious for it because they would tease you and make you think status quo was going to change, and then it didn't really change as much as it felt like it was going to.
mhm. Well, yeah, and that could be the case. Like I said, I haven't seen it, but that's just every sitcom
But anyway,
because
I
it's
digress.
that.
So let's backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
The premise of this is fun. It doesn't actually have enough fun, I don't think, with the situation itself. It's kind of more uh, just Keaton doing goofy stuff around it, and Henry Winkler being the straight man and being uncomfortable with things and being not proactive. Although I think the movie makes a way bigger deal about his not moving forward in life and being afraid of everything toward the end in a way I didn't realize that's what it was even about and where we were going toward the beginning. I think it could have been clearer that that was the arc that he was embarking upon. I'm saying this on a first viewing. Like maybe if I go back and see it a second time, I'll be like, okay, we seeded more of this than I realized. But just my experience with it was, oh, he's got to learn to not be afraid. Like that's what this is about.
hmm
Okay,
Um,
I thought that was just kind of his personality. I didn't realize he was going to have
yeah.
to overcome that and start yelling at barking dogs. And like it sort of works, but I didn't feel primed for it.
Yeah, because I think early on he gets attacked by the dog, but like you're not necessarily thinking that that's where it's going. I do agree with the whole like they don't get as much joke mileage out of the prostitution thing as you'd think that they would, because it's kind of just one big set piece in a way. Like that's like the main thing that we do with it, where they bring all the frat guys to the morgue.
Yeah, and that seemed like almost an obligatory scene to me, where it's like we've
Sure,
got
yeah,
we've got a I don't know, we got to have a party in a morgue because that's a crazy situation to have there. We've got to try to have a sense of urgency and act like the stakes are high because we're having this huge party, and it would be bad if the boss found out. But then you don't really have a sense of urgency because the boss never shows up. Like
yeah,
you wonder, this was part of the, I don't mean to jump around too much. This was part of my problem with the whole premise of it. There really should be a ticking time bomb. You really should be kind of on pins and needles a little bit, even through the fun, even through the comedy, because the movie kind of wants you to be, but I don't have any reason to, right? Where, okay, this is a bad idea. Like, how in the world is it going to work where you take the city morgue and you have, and it's not just a few prostitutes, it's like 20 or 30 of them.
oh, it's a ton of them. They got like a little army going.
We're running an entire operation that feels like more than a two-man operation. Like it seems like they need a full staff to run this thing, right? And the boss never shows up. The cops are never called. Nobody's ever like wondering uh, like why there's all these people there. And then the other thing is, because like the cars have got to show up. It can't just be the not hearses. We're at a morgue, but it can't just be like the cars that go pick up bodies. And the other thing too is there are bodies in the morgue. I guess they're only ever picked up during the day.
Mhm.
Like there's never a call. I don't think there's one scene in the movie where they get a call to go pick up. Well, there is, and then he hangs up on the guy. But
Yeah,
that's the only scene where that happens. Like, when are they going to get bodies? We're told that Michael Keaton's character. I did enjoy this movie, but these were things that kind of took me out a little bit.
Cap
And that
worked at the morgue, so he's like,
I
this
did
is
not work at a morgue. I worked at a mortuary. They're very different things. But I did want to talk about. No, they really are. They're very different
yeah.
things. But I did want to talk about that. Because from my experience working at a mortuary, you do get calls at night, and sometimes you get more calls at night than you do during the day. Because I don't know if you know this, people die at all hours. There's not like a. There's not like a quota that the universe is filling. Okay, like
No, death works a 9 to 5, Cap.
people die in their sleep. Like folks are gonna die at any time of the day. And Michael Keaton is taking his, and I think it's funny. He's taking the company car and he's doing like bar mitzvahs and parties and things. And I think that's really funny. But Henry Winkler's like, but what if we get a call? And I'm like, yeah, where's that situation? Like, why do we never do that bit where somebody calls and it's like, I can't leave, and my other guy is like doing a birthday party.
Mhm. That's the next episode. We just
Oh,
didn't
okay.
get that one. It was canceled before then, sadly.
And then I also think that we're maybe taking in a way, especially the way it's set up. It almost takes, and I guess I'm of two minds about it because you don't want to be too flippant with it, but then this is a silly comedy and you almost have to be. Tell me what you think about this.
Mhm.
We almost take the prostitution thing too seriously to then be as coy and silly with it as we do. Because the whole reason that they besides the fact that there's just money in it, the whole reason they start this in the first place is because the prostitutes are being mistreated by their pimps, and like a woman gets her arm broken. Like it's serious, it's like heavy stuff, and it's almost like they said, let's take two really dark ideas and try to make a lighthearted comedy about it. And
Mhm.
it kind of like, I want that to work because it's a fun idea, but it can't decide how serious, how heavy it wants to take that, all of that material.
Yeah. No, you're right, because that all that stuff is pretty dramatic at the start. Um, and I'm not entirely sure where it lands on that, but I don't. Somehow while watching it, whoa, that was weird. Somehow while watching it, it was Like it didn't feel tonally jarring.
I kind of here's the thing. I'm hesitating because I wonder if they never touched on the danger and the seriousness of the prostitution lifestyle. If I would come in and go, okay, this movie is taking a very serious subject matter and, uh, just being goofy with it, and that's I don't even want to say irresponsible, but it's just like so unrealistic. I wouldn't believe it, or I wouldn't think that that's what you should do with it. But having seen it now, I kind of wonder if I would have noticed if they just never brought up the darker side of it. Um, and part of the problem with it too is the ways in which sometimes we're being kind of realistic and serious about character building and making these characters three-dimensional and sympathetic and understanding where they come from, and then the ways in which we don't care about that at all. It can't decide if it wants to be a movie or if it wants to be a series of sketches, I guess is kind of the point I'm making. And I think in some places I liked it more because characters were coming alive, but then they don't all really do that. So I really appreciated that Michael Keaton's character is irresponsible and nutty and neurotic for a believable reason. The scene where he kind of breaks down and is like, "My father was a psychopath," and that does things to you. I actually like the writing in that scene. I kind of bought that as a dramatic moment, and some
Mhm.
people might look at that and be like, it's cornball and it's obvious, but I forgot it was a comedy for a second. I was actually buying that moment. But then explain to me in the same movie that you feel the need to give me a reason. Like, he's coming from a place. This is why he's a wild man. In the same movie you do that, you don't tell me why the uh the main what are these characters' names? Um, you don't tell me why. Oh, Belinda, yeah, Keaton. Why Shelley Long's character doesn't ever attempt any other line of work? Why is she stuck in prostitution? Like
That's
she's
what
an
she's good at.
sure, but once she falls in love with Henry Winkler, and he, for pretty obvious reasons and understandable reasons, doesn't want her to keep doing that if they're going to pursue a relationship together. She's very quick to be kind of judgmental with him and be like, why do you expect me to quit my job? And she's like, what else am I going to do? And I'm like, but the discussion should be, here are other things that you might be good at. Why don't you try to get a job? But like, why is she stuck in that? And maybe there's a reason, but it's not given to her. We don't know her background. I don't know how she got to that. Why do we get so much of Keaton's background, but we never get Keaton's background?
Mhm.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, and I guess that didn't really jump out to me because I've seen sitcoms now that do that kind of a thing where you're dating somebody that's in like a sex job like that, and it's like, oh, I don't want you to work there, but that's my job. Like, you just don't want me to have a career, and you don't really go in outside of that, but like that's the drama. So like it didn't really jump out at me because like I'm used to that kind of a trope in sitcoms.
Okay, but
So,
you're right. It is kind of a trope, but the problem is they play it with too much pathos. Like
no, that is
they
fair.
make
Like,
a
yeah.
they make a story point out of she's too intelligent for this job. Why make that a story point? Why make that a major part of her character? And then
Mhm,
and then the whole point is just that's what she does for a living. She's going to keep doing that. She doesn't seem like she wants to keep doing that.
mhm.
If the point was that she likes it, that would be interesting, but I'm not sure about
Yeah,
that.
like it's just we need to do a little bit more with it. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what I think. It's weird to say this. The problem is that it wants to be a story. If only it didn't care so much about that, I wouldn't have these criticisms.
Yeah, no,
But
absolutely.
then when it decides to do some serious drama, it's actually kind of good at it.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and then I guess there's just kind of weird tonal stuff too. Like, you have that scene where the other pimps are trying to kill the Fonz, and then it becomes really cartoony where they just put a hose in his mouth.
Yeah, and it gets
Like,
really dark because like they're gonna poke holes in his neck, and
Yeah, but when they turn it on, it's just like spraying water everywhere. Like it's very cartoony in that way.
Yeah, it really, like I said earlier, it kind of degenerates at the end where it didn't really know where it was going, and then it went, oh, it's a movie. We've got to end this somehow. I
It definitely has that with the trial part where it's like, oh, what's gonna happen to us? I don't know, election,
Well, and then and then
or
they
something.
really rushed the ending where they're like, okay, here's what has it's 5 minute wrap up, man. It's like it's TNG 5 minute wrap up. They're like, okay, so we've got two big threads we've got to wrap up. We've got to have Shirley Long and Henry Winkler like make up, and he apologizes for not being proactive and for not telling her that he loves her earlier. Even though, again, I didn't realize that's what the problem was supposed to be exactly. I thought it was more that he was like making expectations of her that were unfounded because like you said that's her job, but what he really was supposed to do is just say the magic words I love you and then she would maybe quit. Like
Which is which is
it's
really
not where I
weird.
thought we were going.
Which is really weird because he says I love you, and then a minute later he can't say it, and she says it for him, and he's like, oh, I didn't say it though, did I? And I'm like, but you did like a minute ago.
Yeah, it's weird.
um,
And then they go, but also Michael Keaton was the other important character in this movie, and we've now said that he's not a worthless person because he in a roundabout way led our protagonist, or I guess our other, you could say it's triple protagonist, I guess, but Henry Winkler is more or less the protagonist. He led our protagonist to his self discovery and to his confidence, and so they have to make up, and the universe has to reward Michael Keaton for doing a good thing. So we just conveniently have him working at the same place where Shelley Long is at now, and neither of them know that they're there. And there's one major convenience at the beginning of this that I was willing to give the movie for setting up the premise, which is like it ends up being too many of them where they meet toward the beginning, Henry Winkler and Shirley Long, because she's a prostitute and she's just in the right place at the wrong time. And then it turns out that she just happens to live down the hall from him, which also makes it very, very sitcom-y. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go with this. And they get to the end, and those two are working in the same place and don't know it. And I'm like, that's a bridge too far.
well, what's weird about that is because that's like the most typical thing is the ending where he runs in. Like if you change the location to like the airport and she's gonna leave and he's got to run in to stop there, and then Michael Keaton is just like a luggage boy that works there just so they can all be there at the same time. Like it's very awkward.
Yeah, like Keaton could be working, and by Keaton I mean Michael Keaton. This is
Yeah, not
hilarious.
Belinda
Not
Keaton.
Belinda Keaton. Gee, I wonder why I couldn't remember that name. Uh, yeah, Michael Keaton's character could have been working anywhere. And it's almost like just because he's a weirdo, of course, he's like the towel boy at a like sort of brothel. It's like, well, he was just working at a morgue before, which is like a normal above board job. Like, why isn't he at the Dairy Queen? I don't understand.
Well,
He
it's
could
just that we can get him in
he
a
could be doing
Tarzan
anything
costume.
in a Tarzan costume.
Yeah, which is worth it just for the joke of him diving off the railing.
No, 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 that's funny. Well, and that's the thing is, like I said earlier, I had this big separation where I actually kind of enjoyed something in every scene of this movie. I can't say
Mm.
every moment, but very nearly. Like it never completely lost me, but I got disappointed toward the end because I like it it lost the story part of my brain by the last third, but like
Yeah, for
the
sure.
comedy writing never stopped
Mhm.
working, and Michael Keaton's always funny, and I think Winkler is good all the way through as the straight man. Like it always worked
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it at
as an
work today.
entertainment. And of course
Yeah.
comedy is subjective,
Mhm.
and so
No,
like you either find
absolutely.
this funny or you don't. But if we want to just look at it just as a comedy, yes, it's funny. as
Yeah.
as a story, it's not a great story ultimately.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about it at work today, and I was like, in a lot of ways, this is just like a very typical like comedy movie, but it also made me laugh more than like a lot of those typically do. So like it gets a boost through that. But like story wise,
Absolutely.
it's very like you know what's happening, you know what's gonna happen. Like it's been there, done that.
Except for the things that they tack on at the end that feel obligatory, but I didn't see coming because I was giving it more credit than that. So when suddenly
Yeah,
like Winkler has like the sandwich speech, I actually kind of liked that, but I wanted more of a lead into it. Like I didn't feel like we got there. And in a movie where I was, by the way, kind of appreciating how much downtime and natural buildup we got to just the general premise. And sometimes you'll have movies that don't get there fast enough, and I'll kind of complain about it if there's not enough going on and it feels like we're just spinning our wheels, like Ghostbusters 2016 or something, where
it's funny you should mention that
yeah,
because
because all we're
that's
doing
back.
is dancing until we finally build the Ghostbusters.
No,
Here,
no,
like
the
you
sandwich stuff.
never even know what the premise is, which I really appreciated because I thought it was just, oh, it's just this fun comedy in a morgue, and then wait, and now we're gonna do prostitution. This is nuts. Like,
Mm,
so I kind of
no,
like how long it took to get there.
no, it's like a very specific example of like this is how comedy writing works and this is how it doesn't work. Which is you have the joke of, oh, they delivered my sandwich and they got it wrong, but I'm like a pushover, so whatever, like I'm not gonna do anything with it. And then by the end he's like, you know what? Like screw you guys. You guys messed up my sandwich. And then you have like a payoff joke for that. Instead of just
Yeah.
like 5 scenes of a character going, ah, my wontons, there's not enough wontons in my soup. And then there's no payoff for that.
And this is set up and pay off, but there's something in the middle missing.
Yeah,
Is my
certainly,
complaint.
certainly. But it's like
I did like that scene though.
at least worked. Like there
Oh,
was some
absolutely.
level of thought.
There's quite a bit of good set and payoff in this movie. You know what I like? I like that Michael Keaton is a poor guy who can't even afford a radio in his car. He's driving. Imagine him as an Uber driver, right? He's
Oh no, I couldn't. Watching it, it was like giving me hives. I was like, oh my god, I can't do this. I can't look at this when he's driving.
he's driving someone somewhere, and he goes, "Hey, do you like music?" And the guy goes, "Yeah," and he just starts singing "Jumpin' Jack Flash." It's great. And then
Yeah.
there's a payoff to that later, which is the reason I bring this up. My point is, later on, he is rolling in the dough now. He's spending a lot of money on frivolous things. He buys a car. What does his personalized license plate say? It was really funny, and I can't
Oh,
remember it
what was
now.
it?
It was like "I'm great" or "I'm something." I can't remember, but it was really funny.
I can't remember offhand, but yeah.
And now he's got the music in his car, but he still only ever listens to the one song.
Well, yeah. Well, that's how
He's
he's
got it in his
introduced.
Walkman. He's got it in his car. He's singing it at people.
Yeah, that's how he's introduced. He's singing it as he walks into the morgue. Uh, but he starts driving and he's like, "Check this out! I can open
Oh,
my
I'm
trunk."
cool. Thank you, Stone Gassman. That's what it was. It just says "I'm cool" in the front.
That was what was giving me hives. He's driving and he's like, "Check this out! I can open my trunk," and then he hits it and it opens up and just stuff flies out.
Stuff's flying out of it. He's like, everything's automatic. He's talking about all the great features in this car from 1982.
Yeah, and he's like, "And my glass is
It's
glass."
glass.
Yeah.
He's like flipping off cops because of the novelty of tinted glass.
No, exactly. It was giving me hives watching him drive. I was like, I can't do this.
I mean, he's given a master class on comedy acting.
Absolutely. I know you're always the one that mentions the Siskel and Ebert stuff, but I don't know if you saw Siskel's review of this.
He doesn't like it, but and it's so weird too because the only thing he liked with this movie is Keaton. He thought the
Yeah.
script was real weak, and I agree with him on quite a bit of it. But the movie is more enjoyable to me than it was to him. But it's so weird when you hear him talk about everything, and I don't mean to say that it's even possible to be completely consistent as a critic. Because it drives me nuts when people expect total consistency from me. Where it's like, well, then, but you liked this. How did you not like this? And it's like I'm just trying to articulate and explain why I felt the way I did. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but it is kind of interesting when you go look at the way he's talking about Jim Carrey 10 years later, and you're like, how did you latch on to Michael Keaton and his comedic chops like this, and you found Jim Carrey so annoying? Like it's
Uh,
interesting.
I don't know, but he was right. Anyways, moving on. Um, no, I noticed that too. I thought it was interesting that he was. I think his like direct quote was, "I'd really like to see Michael Keaton just not in Night Shift," and I was
Yeah,
like, "Well,
he said
that's harsh,"
he
but
said I wouldn't. He said I would after this movie. And remember, this is Michael Keaton's first starring role. He goes, I would go see him in anything right now, as long as it's not Night Shift.
yeah. Yeah, I saw that when I was looking it up, and I was like, "Oh, that's a little harsh." But I mean, he is great in this movie.
And it is the kind of crazy role that you almost want to see him get to do on a weekly basis. You know, like
No, because all sitcoms have the crazy
it's
guy.
Joey from
And
Friends, it's Kramer, right? Like he's
yeah,
the guy that says wacky things and makes you go, how does a person even get to that? And he's got that Kramer thing where he gets these flashes of insight where he thinks he's got this brilliant idea that should make him rich, and anybody that's lived any amount of life would go, that would never work, that's preposterous.
mhm.
um
No, it makes me really wish that Michael Keaton that they were able to get him on Arrested Development, because I think he would have killed on that show.
yeah.
Oh well.
And I've only ever seen the pilot for that, so I can't speak to it.
Mhm.
But he has that. He keeps talking to it in a tape recorder, right? Oh, and I love the bit. Everything's coming back to me. I love the bit where he's like, he gets a tape recorder as a gift, and he goes, "I was gonna like a new one." He goes, "I was gonna buy one of these, but this one's better because I didn't have to pay for it." Like everything that comes out of his mouth is kind of gold, right?
Yeah.
And you give him a lot of credit for the delivery, but that's the part of the script that's really working all the time.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and maybe he's doing some ad libbing, but you imagine most of it's probably written. It feels kind of Ghostbusters tight in that way. The plotting is not tight like that, but
Yeah.
the banter is. But you get that bit toward the beginning where he's got all these ideas, and he's reading everything into a tape recorder, and then he's like, and I've even got musicals. I've written whole musicals. Like, okay. And he goes, I've got this brilliant idea. What if you fed the tuna fish the mayonnaise? So the mayonnaise was already in the can of tuna.
Oh, what's the thing that it's like an invention or something that he says that he came up with before they did? I'm trying to think of what it was.
Was it edible paper?
No, I don't think
That's an early joke where he's like, "Oh, here's an idea. You eat the paper so you don't have to throw it away. It's already gone."
But there's a part where it's like
Oh,
he's
he
like,
says he made something that exists.
yeah, where he's like, did you know I thought of this before they did? And then later on he brings it up again where he's talking. He's like, by the way, did I tell you that I thought of this before they did? And I was like, I've met this guy.
I don't remember that, but I did
I
feel
can't remember
like
what it was.
jokes were flying so fast and free with this
Exactly.
that I was like, I'm gonna need 2 or 3 viewings, and I know I'm gonna notice stuff I didn't notice before.
No, and that's the Robin Williams of it, right? Like he's just like flying at you at all times.
He immediately
Yeah, then
grabbed
he's
me.
got the blackjack system when he gets kicked out of Atlantic
He
City
goes,
for it.
"I got kicked out because I was too good. You lost $200."
Yeah, and didn't he like assault somebody? Or
That's why he got
something?
thrown
He keeps
out.
going.
He goes, "I got thrown out because I was too good." But no, Austin, he grabbed me immediately. I mean, I'm already biased toward Michael Keaton. I was excited he was going to be in this. I was doubly
Yeah,
excited when I
sure.
realized that he was more of a main character than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be even more supporting, and I was like, "Oh, he's like one of the leads in this." Okay. But I knew we were maybe in for a treat when you get that first bit of really great comedic timing from him where it's just now dawning on him that he's going to be working at a morgue and dealing with dead people. And this is a character that, like, nothing phases, and he has no sense of responsibility or even cause and effect. Like, he's not worried about consequences for anything. He's that kind of character. He opens up one of the drawers and he goes, "These people are dead!" And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be really funny, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, he's probably the best part of the movie. Like I said, he's that sitcom like fan favorite character that every sitcom has, where it's like they're made to be the character everybody goes like, oh yeah, like that's the guy.
Then you'd try to spin him off and give him his own sitcom, and it wouldn't work at all.
Yeah, exactly. No,
And sometimes it does. I mean,
he
Mork
gets
and
the
Mindy
Blaze
obviously was huge,
show.
but Joey not so much. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
So he gets the Blaze show. It's like, oh, this just doesn't work.
It's just called Blaze.
Yeah. It's a sitcom where he and Blaze the cat live together, and that's the joke. That's
We
why it only lasted one season.
we have somehow talked about this for an hour, almost. What have we not hit that you would like to mention, Austin?
Mm, nothing's coming to mind. This is one of those movies that I found. Like I don't have like a ton to say. It's just kind of like, no, I really enjoyed it. Like, go watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely recommending that you watch it. I'm picking stuff apart story wise, but it's a lot of fun to look at. And
Mhm.
like, I'll probably buy this movie and put it in my collection.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing, and I know we talked about what was there was like a specific name you had for it, but for the request where like would we buy it or not? And I don't think we ever talked about that again. But
Oh,
for
we should
this
keep
one,
doing that. Yeah. Did I have like
yeah,
a name for? I had some kind of a segment name for that.
yeah, you were like, maybe I'll even get a shelf, and I'll have like a specific shelf behind
Oh
me for it.
yeah, yeah, like a Hall of Fame kind of thing.
That's what it was. It was the Hall of Fame. That's like the most obvious name. How did I
We
forget that?
should do
But yeah,
that. Yeah. Goodness. See, this is the problem with planning on camera. It's not like I'm writing anything down.
I'll write it on the list. All right, just write. Remember to keep track of Hall of Fame.
No, we definitely should do that. Hey, real quick, do you? I've been thinking about this and why the ending didn't really work for me. Do you not think that this is a wacky enough movie that it maybe could have gotten away with the kind of the Ghostbusters thing? Where and I was thinking Ghostbusters through a lot of this. In some ways it kind of felt like a Reitman comedy. And I felt like it's maybe crazy enough that they get thrown in jail and then they get out and then the city decides, even though prostitution is illegal, we should leave these guys alone and let them do what they're doing
So they
the
cleaned up the streets.
because the girls are safer. They're sort of in a really weird roundabout way heroes. We'll just let them do their thing.
They own a Burger King now.
That's how it should have ended, I think.
No, that would have been like a good ending.
And I guess then I'm arguing for it to be even more of a sitcom pilot, because then the end of it is this is the premise of our show.
Yeah,
But it almost felt like it was trying too hard to not be a sitcom pilot. I guess what I'm saying is it wants to be a movie so bad, doesn't know how to do that, that if it would just be a sitcom pilot, it's a better movie. I guess, is what I'm saying.
curse you, Ron Howard. Don't you know how to make a movie?
Well, do you see what I'm saying though?
Yeah,
Because
no, I
because
agree.
then it's at least like leaning into what it is,
Yeah,
which is a glorified sitcom. And as a movie premise, it ends up being a more cohesive thing if it just lets itself be that, even though it's not really a movie. You know what I mean? But then it becomes more of a movie if it would just be what it is.
yeah. No, that would have been an interesting ending. Like I said, the ending we
It
got is
peters out.
basically the rom-com airport ending, just not in an airport. So
I had not thought of that before you said it. That's absolutely what it is.
yeah, so
But it's fun. I mean, I'm really glad I saw
yeah,
it.
absolutely. At least it's a rom-com airport ending in like a comedy and not a big major Spider-Man movie, so you would beat that one, Ron Howard.
Or that Nick Cage movie that we watched.
Um,
Remember
the
that
Family
book
Man.
ended with an airport
Yeah, like the two worst scenes.
and had that really wacky heightened premise, and I don't even remember what it was anymore.
What was
It went
that?
supernatural, and I didn't expect it to.
Yeah, it was
What was
the
it?
yeah, because magical Don Cheadle comes and he gives them an alternate reality where
That's
he lives with that woman.
that's what it was. Yeah, I was a time travel. It's not time travel. It was like an alternate dimension thing
Yeah, it was an alternate dimension thing that Don Cheadle just gives him.
with no explanation.
Yeah, I don't know. He's Algae Rhythm from Space Jam 2. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's true.
He can greenlight WB movies.
How did he get typecast in that?
I don't know, but
A
I'm also
decade
kind
apart
of
or
glad.
more. Sorry, what?
Said I don't know, but I'm kind of glad.
What was that movie called?
The Family Man,
That's what it was.
because I was like, oh, somebody requested Family Guy, and you were like, what?
That's not gonna make the Hall of Fame, I don't think.
I mean, it gave me the I'm pissed.
I've got to go back to whatever video it was where I pitched the Hall of Fame because I don't remember how we were gonna put the movies on it. Like I'm
I
sure
don't
it's based
know.
on the rankings somehow, right?
I think yeah. I think we brought it up first when we showed everyone our ranking. So it would be the whatever the last request month request was.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. This was a lot of fun to talk about, and I know I was a little bit more critical than Austin, but I don't know. It wants to be a better story than it is, and so I'm going to complain about
Yeah.
that stuff. But it was a lot of fun to
Oh, that's
watch,
fair.
and I'm glad we saw it. Next week we're going to be doing another John Early request, and he asked us for Patriot games. That's Brightburns there in the comments. So that's what we're going to talk about next time. That is a major movie I've never seen, so it's probably about time.
Well, and I've never seen any of the Jack Ryan movies. I've always wanted to, but never have,
I
and that's
saw
one of
Shadow
the Harrison
Recruit
Ford
and
ones.
liked it quite a bit. And
Oh, okay.
I always forget about the ones before they put Jack Ryan in the title.
Yeah. Yeah, like Hunt for Red October and
Yeah, like I
Patriot.
always forget those are all the same character.
Well, there is like a 4K box set that's like the Jack Ryan movie set. It's those, and I think only two of them have the same actor.
I should buy that just so that I can remember that they're all part of sort of technically the same franchise.
Well, it's got a TV show now on Amazon Prime.
And I've heard good things about that.
I heard the first season was really good, and then it like dipped a little bit in two, but I don't know how true that
Okay,
is.
but that happens with everything, right? Like
Yeah,
if,
of
if it's got a
course.
good first season, I'll watch that. Whatever. I
Yeah.
love Heroes. I don't want to ever watch that past the first season, but I love that first season.
Well, I just like spy things, so like
Right.
I should finally jump on Jack Ryan. I almost bought that 4K set just on a whim a while back 'cause it was only like $80, and for like six movies on 4K, that's not a bad deal.
No, that's true. Yeah, if you buy 4K.
Mhm.
I have still not switched to that because my eyesight kind of sucks and I don't know if I can tell the difference enough.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I've got too many setups where it's like, oh god, I'd have to put 4K in like three places and get all these players again. Anyway, Stone Gasman
Absolutely.
says, "Thank you, Captain Austin, and be sure to smash
Be sure to
that like
smash
button."
that like button, smash that subscribe button.
No, Stone Gasman, we appreciate you, man. You've always got these
Send me
eclectic,
money to fix my knee that I just
off the
broke.
beaten path kind of choices that I might not ever look at otherwise. I'm sorry, Austin. What were you trying to say?
Said, now send me money for the knee I just broke. Ow.
We will see you guys again next week for Patriot Games, and until then, we appreciate you watching. I will be back tomorrow night for the Captain Logan show, and also After Dark for patrons right after that, and then Friday night we're doing the Weird Al movie, and Sunday in the afternoon we're doing Black Panther 2. So big week for us. I hope to see you at one or all of those videos. And in the meantime, once again, I was Captain Logan. This was Austin the Day Ghost. Bye, everybody.